recording. We are excited to have everyone with us again for another Love What You Do. Again, it is March 7th, and we are talking about walls of resistance and what level you're at. Remember, we get to help leaders own their leadership and be purposeful about assessing their evidence so that they truly can walk their talk and love what they do again or greater. And today, we want to specifically talk about walls of resistance. And Richard, I'm going to share something I shared with you on Sunday. And I said to Richard, I said, I'm having my own walls of resistance as we're building a team. I'm like, okay, am I at a place where I've got all the right people, all the right situations, et cetera, set up? And he says, you are excellent at building a team. And the team is excellent at doing their part of the job. And I loved the great feedback. And what I talked about in that video is you surround yourself with people that own their place. They own their role, own their commitments, etc. Yet we all go through a different process. So in that walls of resistance, it's normal. Remember that we talk about in the book that there's multitude of layers to those walls of resistance. There are a multitude of things that are happening in those walls of resistance. And so the other beautiful visual that Ms. Haley created is, what does your next level look like? And I love the little visuals that she does. And it's almost like a little Pac-Man thing going on there. It is awesome, whether it be time, whether it be money, whether it be agreements, whether it be a red flag, whatever it is, everybody's got a different stepping stone. And I'm sure I'm going to let Ms. Haley comment on a few of the additional things of how she put this together, because I love the wisdom and depth that she takes to put into these visuals. Yet each of us have a different situation that happens at each level. And as I talked about in the video we did for Possibility Monday, sometimes on certain things we need to take a step back and review and determine. And sometimes the phrase is slow down to speed up. There is the value of slowing down. There is value in verifying, is everything in the process and system you want to make it effective. And we're discovering every day when some things are perfect and or working effectively, and where some things we have some great opportunity for growth. So some of our stairs we're climbing quite effectively and quickly, and some of them we're taking a step back and saying, okay, there's some more things we need to address and be purposeful about. So is there anything else you want to add to this particular slide, Ms. Haley?
Just, if you're looking at the visual and talking about walls of resistance, when you have a goal and you have something that you're looking toward that looks different from what you're doing now, as goals often do, that's why they're goals, right? You want something different than what you have now. Things have to change. So sometimes your time management has to change, or you have to redelegate your energy, or you have to build different relationships. You have to delegate your money a different way. So that was kind of the thought behind this visual, is as you're going through all of these changes that are required for you to get to where you want to go, these walls of resistance are going to pop up at each step, because we are resistant to change. I think I know I am personally, and just as humans, that's like a plight that we have. So being aware of that as you're stepping into, okay, I'm aware that I'm now going to be managing my time differently, or my energy is different, so that you can sense if you're tense about it, or if something's not, it's not jiving with you the way that you anticipated, because you have to be in control of that stuff. You have to be aware of how that is affecting you, so that you can build a process that works for you in all of these different areas, so that the changes that you're making are repeatable. Does that make sense?
Immense. And I now get the fact that second step is a battery and energy.
Yes.
And we were talking about, some days I get time to see the visuals in advance, and sometimes I don't. So the fun part is that, and a great job of explaining the precious commitments. And this is what Haley talked about in her previous podcast I mentioned, is our content is very systemized, and Haley spends an immense amount of time making sure that things align and are very purposeful in how we share and how we set you up for the next slide, which is even more confirmation. So some of you may have heard about or read our book and talked about the fact that we either have crap or we have opportunity for fertilizer. So we wanted to talk today about the walls of resistance and all the different steps that you all are taking, and how you might come up against some fear walls. And so we've used this visual in the book and for just this moment, and we can come back to this as need be, contemplate something that might be a step that you're hitting or a level that you're getting ready to go into that next level. And you're hitting some fear or some resistance. And what we've talked about is that sometimes we get into that insanity circle where you constantly, you say, I want something, but then the wall hits and you go back to what we call the insanity circle. And you keep repeating the same thing over and over again and wondering how you're not getting the result you want to achieve. In most cases, there's some type of fear that's causing that wall of resistance. And sometimes the fear is the unknown. Sometimes the fear is success. Sometimes the fear is failure. Sometimes it's a lot of different things. Sometimes it's loss. And it's a whole different process that happens when we hit that wall. And what we found is that trust and belief will show up in our actions, will usually move us past this wall when we have a complete belief of that abundance, complete belief in what we love and how we love what we do and how we get to go about doing it. And we get to walk through that wall of resistance. Is everybody following that? Sorta? You can see the looks on. So may I, Richard, may I give you an example?
Please.
If you were to pick something in your current level, you and the next level you're working towards, what would be a simple step that you would like to take?
Well, an obvious tangible one is bringing on an attorney.
That's a beautiful step. What might be the fear of bringing on another attorney?
Part is the financial commitment, for sure, and not being able to meet that. Part is picking the right person. Part is losing control to some extent, you know, not that I'm control oriented or anything.
No, of course not.
So, I mean, I can think of a bunch of walls there, you know.
Right. And so you can see all the different walls. And so it's easier to keep going through the vicious cycle of repeating what we constantly do. So we get stuck in that bottom quadrant. And in all reality, it's about committing to what we believe is possible, what we trust is possible, and taking the first step. So the first step may be identifying who or what that attorney would look like and what would be the need to move them to the next step. Is it really about the money? Is it an opportunity to create an investment structure that would be a win-win for everybody? Is it really about the control, or is there an opportunity to train and build up to the level of what your company wants to create and what type of presence and commitment you are honoring? Does that make sense? So moving into past the wall and determining the steps to move to step over and work through those layers. And there, as we just discussed, there are a multitude of different options, right? It was just in one simple question of what could that wall of resistance be? And we discovered a multitude of them and what they could be attached to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That help? Stephen, did you need more clarity? You're muted.
No, when I heard when I heard you ask the question, and you start reverse engineering it from, reverse engineering it, what I generally come up with in my case is I don't trust myself or I just don't trust myself enough or fully enough to take that step. And it comes back to me. And it's not losing control, other than losing control because I didn't do something or I didn't set it up correctly. And it always comes back to me. And I'm at this point right now, I'm right at the point of just taking this step. And if it is me, then it'll come back to me and we'll call it a mistake and we'll move forward. But I'm trying to be as, I'm trying to consider all the options so that I can do, I guess, my diligence in knowing that I did the best I could when I make the decision, And then if it doesn't work out, then call it a mistake and you accept it and you move on. And I just haven't been in a position to be able to afford to make those kind of mistakes.
Well, and Stephen, hold that thought for just a minute. Haley, will you share the last question and anything else you wanted to comment on this one before we go in there?
Well, the last question is actually on the previous slide. Hold on. Because it's just, what does your next level look like? This
Perfect.
is the last slide. So,
And Haley, any other commentary before we stop sharing screen?
no, we're
Awesome.
good.
So Stephen, there's a couple things you said about affording and trusting. And so I want to talk about the stair steps of that and what Haley talked about in whether it be time management, whether it be energy, whether it be relationships, whether it be money. Those are some big pieces of every stair step, right? And there's a trust in ourselves and a trust in others. And the trust always starts with ourselves first.
Mhm.
Because until we learn how to trust ourselves, it's difficult to trust anyone else. And I've spent a whole lot of time teaching people that some people give trust and some people want you to gain trust. And most often than not, we need to start with both. We need to give trust that gets to be developed and grown. And then people can lose our trust at times, right? Yet, by the way, does that happen for ourselves as well?
Yeah,
All the time.
of course. Yeah.
And so, Stephen, the gift is what you've also learned is sometimes you can't afford not to.
This is true.
And what resonated with you when I said that?
Well, exactly what you said. Sometimes we can't afford not to. If we continue doing what we're doing, we're not going to be able to do that either. So you need to make a change. And I've been there. I've been on that precipice, and it is a precipice. I mean, it's so.
Well, and when we use the word afford, we come from a scarcity mindset. And love and abundance is the other side of that wall, right? And so if we're operating from a trust factor, we get to trust, and afford sometimes can be played in the wrong perspective. So let me give you another example. And Stephen, the exciting thing about when you talked about, having that moment of awareness of, yes, that insanity is costing me. You remember another phrase I use, sometimes the pain of doing needs to be greater than the pain of not doing.
Right.
And that example, so technically, if we didn't get our foot out of bed, would we have some cost to pay?
If we do it 2 days in a row, yeah.
Right? Or 5 days or 10 days,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No, let's leave it at 2 days. We do it 2 days.
Well,
Let's not give me permission.
agreed. Well, and everybody went through a season. Quite a few people have gone through seasons where they were ill and they had days they needed to take rest. And in that case, they could afford to take days in bed because they paid the price if they didn't.
Right.
So afford can have different meanings and wealth. And sometimes we give meaning to afford that doesn't actually have the right evidence. Sometimes we create, and Richard, I'm going to apply this to you in that perspective. Sometimes we create a belief system that says, my belief system is justifying certain requirements needed to achieve something, and I may be completely inaccurate with my belief system. My afford may be a whole different perspective than what I expected. And if I create that belief system, I've now actually cost myself instead of afford it. And then it changes our perspective. So it's fun to see the looks on everybody's faces right now. Like, I don't know where you're going. So I'm going to give you an example of all of those together. Everybody gains relationship. And when we have a conversation, John Maxwell would say, we earn change in our pocket. So each relationship we have that everybody agrees on, everybody puts, say, 10 cents in their pocket, and everybody's got 10 cents. And we keep having those conversations and we keep building relationships. We follow through. So now we've got dollars or $5 or $10. But then somebody disappoints us. How much change do you think we take out of the pocket when somebody disappoints us?
Most of it.
Say again?
Most of it.
Most of it. Sadly, isn't that awful?
Mhm.
That we could earn that much change in so much time, and then all of a sudden, all of that's depleted.
Yeah.
How often do you think that happens with us? For ourselves personally?
Often.
All the time.
Yeah, often.
We are the worst at our own critics. We are the worst at depleting our own energy, money, time, etc. Because we get caught up in stories or beliefs that focus on the negative, not the positive. When we had earned all that other credibility, proof, and documentation that we have reason and evidence to believe differently, and yet we bought into the negative and let it pull out all that energy, money, time, relationship. So we have an opportunity to decide, do we focus on the love and the abundance and the truth and the trust, the action, or do we focus on the scarcity and the insanity circle? Now, Stephen, you're shaking your head because what resonated with you?
Well, just looking at or listening and kind of visualizing and reflecting on, I see in times in the recent past where I've not necessarily worked hard, but I've done what I know works. And then there's a responding profitability to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, so quickly, when you have a hiccup in that, you revert back to a place that you were before you had those experiences that got you to reach your goal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessary to do it. That this is what I'm finding is we do it, but it doesn't have to be that way. But for some reason, it's much easier to slide back into that than it is to move forward from there back to where you need to be, or where you find comfort being. It's I don't know why, but it just seems to be that way. And so you almost, I'm feeling now. I mean, I had someone tell me, I'm just going to say this. I had someone tell me, you're not broke, you just have a cash flow problem. I went, what? And so, you make a decision that doesn't work out quite the way you want. And, 1 month or 2 months, you may not have, literally not have any money, right? You're rolling quarters and people look at you like you're crazy when you try to spend a dollar's worth of quarters. But someone else's perspective is that you just have a cash flow problem. There's 12 months in the year, and 2 of them you're being negatively impacted because you made a decision, and it's impacting 2 of the 12. Don't throw the whole year away because of the 2 months that you made a mistake. So that's a hard place. It's hard to look at it that way when you're there in that place. But what I'm finding is that my whole life didn't fall apart. Everything continued moving forward, and it was a change in mindset halfway through that allowed me to come out of it largely unscathed emotionally. Yeah. So I was broke for a month and a half. It didn't matter. As soon as I changed my thought about it, it was odd. It was like I was no longer broke. So
It's a belief system and a trust system. And who are you trusting? You, your bank account, or your belief system?
well, I'm trusting that God has something in store for me, and I need to continue doing what I know I need to do, and I only know it because He has presented it to me. So it's listening and being sensitive to what's happening around you, and I'm getting it.
I'm thankful.
I'm thankful.
Richard, you have an interesting look on your face.
I've been reaching for this thought that keeps escaping me and then and coming back, but trying to stay focused on what Stephen is saying. So the gist of it is that first, I'm my own worst enemy. Second, I can't ever seem to get done all the things that I think I should get done. And third, I have to accept and embrace an underlying truth that is, I'm never going to choose anything that deliberately torpedoes me. I'm choosing things that I think are the best thing to choose at that moment in time. And the area that I need to trust is to trust that instead of saying, oh, well, you didn't get that done either, and just trust that I've made the right choices as I understood them at the time, and to continue doing that. And that's probably my I don't say single biggest, but it's a wall for me. Right.
Well, and I think there's a phrase called win the battle or win the war. And the opportunity, one of our coaches we had years ago, she used to say, I reminded her of somebody in the boxing ring that constantly got hit, constantly on the side, pulling herself back up on the side of the ring and saying, back in the fight again, let's keep going, right? Because there is what we call persistence. And at the end of the day, somebody put a post on Facebook this weekend and says, failing at one thing doesn't mean you go, if one flat tire is flat, it doesn't mean you go slash the other 3 tires. You figure out what needs to happen to the tire that's flat and get it taken care of. That's what our life wheel is all about, what's on radar, all that fun stuff. And then we own what we need to regain our mind, regain our trust, regain our commitment to where we're headed so that we break through those walls of resistance. And sometimes it is taking a step back and saying, yes, I've made decisions to the best of my ability at this moment. Now I know better about this, and this. So therefore, I'm going to make a different decision about this. I'm going to make a different decision about this. And I can tell you, after 10 plus years of running a business, I can tell you, I wish I would have made a few other decisions much quicker. Right?
That's been my experience.
Right? Even today we're reviewing something. I'm like, doggone it, why wasn't this fixed? And yet, can we change what happened yesterday? We cannot change that. What we can change is what we're going to do about it today, and what system we are going to put in place. One, to delegate so that we can be in our best place, knowing Kayla and I were just having a discussion today. This is areas I'm not strong on. She's amazing at. She takes over that. And I am learning.
Vice versa.
Right. That was a fun conversation today too. Right. So the gift is we are learning how to let go and trust that person's got that handled. That person's got that handled. That person's got that handled. I don't need to worry about it anymore. Right. And allow myself to function in my best role, my highest potential. And that means that I trust and surround myself with people I trust. And I give them the ability to have it as well as gain it. That makes sense?
So another aspect of trusting myself in this instance is also to trust that even though my thought process can be different from other people and may arrive at a different conclusion than other people, I tend to think, oh, gee, maybe I just did that wrong or had that wrong or whatever. And I have to stick with my own analysis of the situation. I got some really good examples of where I was just so far ahead of the curve, it's ridiculous, and I never capitalized on it, right? I can think of 3 very specific things. So, so it's really learning to not only trust that I would never deliberately make a choice that was bad for me, but also to trust that my analysis was the right analysis for me.
Isn't that awesome? And
Yeah.
yes, that is a beautiful gift to give yourself, to say, this is how I'm going to work through my walls of resistance, and trust that each time I make a decision, each stair I step, I'm going to trust that that's the right decision for this moment. And therefore I can capitalize on future decisions because I'm trusting myself.
Mhm.
That is a first major foundation, major foundation. Is there other questions anybody wants to bring up? Any other thoughts? It is open forum.
I do have a thought. Where I see this come up the most in my life, probably because I don't run a business the same way that you 3 are running a business, but I see this come up in my relationships and my friendships, because if we're going back to that idea of like change in your pocket, every time you have a conversation with someone, you're putting 10 cents, right? So if you're in a relationship with somebody, whether that would be friendship or a marriage, whatever it is, and you have a certain amount of change, right? And then the trust is broken and you throw out most of it, then you start working toward regaining that change. But most of the time you're operating from the position of no change in your pocket. When you've had all of this change in your pocket for most of the time, you've just thrown it all out. And now you're going to operate from that point of scarcity. So you're not really going to invest as much time. You're not going to pour your whole heart and soul, because now you're protecting yourself, because it's not this abundant, full relationship that it once was. And I think what a shame if we could get over that pride and ego sense of trying to protect ourselves and just say, I'm not going to throw out all of this change. I'm going to allow ourselves to move past that and grow from where we were instead of, moving backward. That is like a huge mindset shift in our friendships and our relationships and our marriages. And it's not how I was raised to be. It's not looking out for yourself. It's very self-sacrificial in that way, and it's hurtful sometimes. But I think the benefit of a full, fulfilled, abundant relationship is what you get at the end.
Mm-hmm. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And it goes back to that wall. I can operate in that insanity and fear and that emptiness and scarcity, or I can come in a place of love and self-sacrifice and abundance and have a fulfilling relationship because I'm willing to show up in that place.
Yeah. And like Richard was saying, and trust that what you're doing is the right thing to do. And even if it doesn't end up with where you think it's going to end up, just trust that you were in the right thing. You were doing the right thing.
Love that. Other questions or thoughts? Pretty simple. So the exciting thing is next week we have a special guest, and he is going to be Mr. Corey Larson. Believe it or not, I've already recorded the video for next week. I'm all excited. I'm ahead of schedule. And he is our new team member that is an amazing resource, and he is available for others to be a resource as well. We're not doing this for him to have, we are helping you see what we've learned in the value of automation and how awesome it is to delegate. Isn't that perfect? To empower another person that we trust and we want to invest in, and they are investing in us, and it's an amazing journey. And so is there any specific questions we want to put to him in advance? In regards to when you think about automation, when you think of somebody on your marketing team, is there any questions that you all could think of for him? No? You're muted, Stephen.
No, I wouldn't even know what question to ask. If it's automated, I don't have to worry about it, right?
So would it be helpful?
Maybe that's the question. How much do I have to worry about it if it is truly automated?
Would it be helpful if I asked him to talk about just generic things that are available to use as automations?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure at what level he should hop into the conversation. You know what I mean?
That's powerful. What are available is a great start.
Right.
Richard, anything else? And I appreciate your question, Stephen, also of, what if it is automated, do I need to worry about it? And, and actually, this is a really good question, because we thought our podcast was automated, and through hiring Corey, we found out our podcast wasn't automated on our website. And so now it is, thankfully, but it doesn't mean it still doesn't need to be supervised by somebody, just to make sure it's functional. But that's a good question. And Richard?
I think that's the essence of using technology to market. I mean, number one is you're always better off if you can be one-on-one. So take that as a starting place. So then the goal of that technology is to get you to the one-on-one. And what's the most efficient, least offensive way of accomplishing that? Because I know me, like a lot of other people, automatically turn off, oh, I got 4,000 ads today. I mean, I get 500 emails a day, and I keep shutting down threads all the time because it's just too much. And so knowing when, where, and how to use that automated technology, I think, is really the most important question for me.
I heard you say what's the most efficient, least offensive way, journey to acquire a face-to-face through automatic technology?
Yes.
That was an excellent question.
Yeah.
And Richard, one of the things Richard, will you share a minute about all the amazing manuals you're building?
Well, together with primarily with Elaine Mason's help, she's a process engineer, we've built not only a process map for each area of the practice and for the business areas like business development, like finance, like client services, and then for tax and for bankruptcy and for estate planning. We have maps for them, and we have checklists for them down to an extremely granular level. Okay, get this thing done, then hand it over to this person to get this thing done, and have them get that done and hand it back and follow up, and just extremely granular. So it's a combination of the process map for a big picture, checklists for the detail, policies that empower that. And we're getting them all integrated and visually represented. So the goal is I'm going to get that into a SharePoint site, which is an intranet, basically, that it can be used as a resource for training. What we're working on now is training, and ultimately to bring artificial intelligence to bear on that, to streamline a lot of those processes. I've said for a while now that I think artificial intelligence can do many things that attorneys do better, faster, and cheaper. But there's a lot of work that has to be done before you can get to that point. So that's kind of the part of the journey I'm on. The other part of the journey is I don't want to have a bunch of employees. I want to have contract relationships with people where, I've laid out specifically what I want to have happen, how I want to have it happen, where it gets done, and what the time frame is, and have them execute it and pay them for it. And in that way, I believe I can build a much larger, much more efficient practice, and do what I want to do, which is semi-retire and do some other things, right? So that's kind of, did that answer the question?
It was excellent. And the reason I asked you to share that is because when you talked about the most efficient, the least offensive, and the most, and ultimately the best journey, you've been building that for years. And so now you're saying from a marketing perspective, you'll be curious whether or not that same funnel is the same perspective. And that's what I'm hearing. And so I wanted to help set Corey and Haley up for success when we go into next week's meeting to have that kind of visual journey. I think that would be really, really cool.
Yeah, that'll be exciting.
Yeah. And Stephen, you're like, yep, agreed.
Yep, agreed.
Any other questions for today? Or we give you 10 more minutes of your day?
Do you have the winning lottery numbers?
Yeah, good question.
Okay. Always like to ask that, you know.
I appreciate that. That was a great question. That would obviously be a no. But, I shouldn't say obviously. Yeah, we always appreciate your presence. We always appreciate your great input. And Haley, thank you for getting all that pieces of it set up. We will be back next week with Corey. And then the following week, we have even more dominoes setting up for each of our conversations. So have an amazing week, everyone.
All right.
See you soon.
You as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye now.